what drew you to the project? You know, why do you want to do it, and what do you think the power of this show is? Double question.
Your first question, what drew me to the project? I actually turned the show down 5 times because they wanted me to come in and read for them, and I was working on something else on Z Nation, and I was so tired. I just wrapped, and I didn't even really. I gave the script a cursory look, and just said no, thank you. And then the director, David Semmel, the guy who directed the pilot, called me at home at like 9:30 in the morning, and I usually sleep until 1 or 2 when I'm not working, and phone kept ringing. I didn't recognize the number. I picked it up, and he said, "What the fuck is your problem?" That's his opening line. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "This is a great project and a great opportunity for you. What the fuck is your problem?" I'm like, "Who is this?" And he was like, "It's Dave." And so he was like, "Be in Ridley Scott's office at 3:30," and hung up on me. And so I called my manager, and I'm like, "Where's Ridley Scott's office?" And he's like, "It's Scott Free Productions." So I'm going over there to talk to them. And I went over, and they pitched me the show, gave me the scope of the world, and at the end of it, they were like, "Do you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I want to do this. I'm an idiot." You know, I could have gotten in my own way in a big way, because I've really fallen in love with what we're doing in my cast. So it's been a really special experience. And what was the second question?
About the power of the show, what do you think is the strength of it?
I mean, this is a show that the concept of it would almost carry it if we didn't do much. I mean, we do a lot. But, I mean, the idea, the American, what we think of every day, the big American buzzwords are liberty and freedom and individuality and all that stuff. And this is a world where that doesn't exist. And it was interesting to get into that mindset. Because the world, our America, as you know, is under occupation. We lost the Second World War, and the Germans control the East and the Japanese control the West. Well, what the Germans did is that they integrated. And the Nazis are Americans. They're American-born people who've been integrated into the party. The Japanese is total occupation. So the people in the government, the people that run things are Japanese. So basically, in the West, if you are anything other than Japanese, you are completely marginalized. And I was watching the pilot, and I was like, even our body language is different. The people in New York, first of all, they're built differently than us, but they carry themselves as Americans. All of the white Americans in San Francisco under Japanese occupation, we're small, we're insular, our carriage is different, and that was completely accidental. We didn't think about that at all. I'm so proud of this, and I hope it does well, because we really, a lot of thought went into, like we had alternative history lessons before we got, like, because we know our history. So it's like, on this date this happened, and this date this happened.
So the things branched off from that?
Yeah, where they got different. And I was reading the book, but they told me to stop reading it when I was reading the pilot.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask you if you read it. But
yeah, and they told me to stop reading it, and then I realized, then I found out all the other actors had read it, and I was like, I was in the middle of an Agatha Christie marathon, and so I just finished, and now I'm going to read the book.
Why didn't they want you to read it?
Because I think my character specifically was much different in the book than we're taking him. But I'm going to read it. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I can differentiate.
I know you almost turned the show down. So.
That's true. Touche.
So you gave us that anecdote about being in the office and changing your mind. Right? Can you maybe give us some insight into what was the moment, what was the thing that changed your mind, attracted you to the character or the role?
Well, they just brought out storyboards, and they started telling me really how rich it was going to be and how nuanced it was going to be, and where my character was going to go over the course of as long as the show could go. And it was just some really interesting things for me to play. My character's an emotional caretaker, and I'm usually sort of the one that the audience sort of looks to as wanting to take care of. My characters typically are pretty vulnerable and good-natured guys, and this character is a bit of a departure for me.
Can you tell us a little bit about the development of your character without spoilers, I guess? If that's possible, even.
Yeah, well, my character has his best friend. His name is Frank, and it's played by Rupert Evans, and they work in a factory together, and they've clearly been friends for a long time. He has this love for him that is really fun to play because you don't know where it comes from. It's never really explained. but he loves him so much that my character is at the beginning of the show. He's very like mouthy. He's gossipy about like the government, what's happening. And toward the end of it, he gets really conservative and really afraid for the people around him. It makes him sort of more insular and more fearful. And from that fear comes this, like, when his friends start to do things that are sort of against the government or against what social mores are, he starts to get angry at them and try to interfere and basically defeat them to protect them because he loves them so much.
Was this was the whole project for you a very different experience? Because for me, you know, I don't want to use the word grew up, okay, but I grew up with you in very different roles than serious stuff. You know, it was French Toast and so on. Was this a different feel for you for work?
You know what's interesting is that if you look at those movies, I'm really not doing things that are that big. Situations are big. You know what I'm saying? But it's the same sort of. It pulls from the same place. It's an honest response to whatever your circumstances. You know, I find it very interesting that dramas get all the awards, and it's sort of like. Actually, I find it interesting that actors get awards at all because we're edited so heavily, and we didn't write it, and we show. You know what I mean? Not to crap on actors, but come on. But I'm basically doing the same work. I haven't done a comedy in a while, but that's not for preference. It's just I'm being offered drama.
Sure.
But it's played pretty much the same way. And you know, Kyle's ate the French toast because he lived in a world where that played. And we walk down the street and it's raining ashes that people are getting burned. That we live in a world where that's our world. So they're similar in a lot of ways. Comedy's way harder. Do you remember at the end of Philadelphia? It was like, it's a sad movie, and then like all of a sudden you're like, I've been here for 2 hours, I need to die. No offense, but I need to die because I gotta get out of here. And so how they trick you, because you know everybody's like in their seats and looking at their watches, but how they get you at the end of it is that they show these two children running in slow motion down and it was him and his brother when they were children. They play sad music. It's a total manipulation. So drama sort of props up. When comedy fails, it fails. You don't know why it fails, but no amount of scoring or sound effects can make a comedy work when it doesn't. So I find it more difficult. I didn't even know that until you asked that question. Comedy's way harder.
Now you were saying like most of your characters usually are more vulnerable and people want to take care of them, and it's kind of, I've always found your characters to help the audience access whatever you're doing. You tend to kind of be a stand-in and bring people into it. And like you said, your character in this is very different.
Yeah.
And is actually doing a lot of subterfuge to stop people who are trying to change things.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Did you enjoy, was that kind of a fresh take for you?
Yeah, I loved the relationships the character has. They're my favorite things about my role in the show. To be able to love people like that. It's how I feel. Like, I'm in love with all of my friends. I don't want to have sex with them, but I love them in a way that is visceral. Like, it hurts me. And to be able to show that side of myself. You know, somebody once asked me what's the role that I want to play more than anything. I said, I want to play a dad. But I don't look like a dad, like the archetype of dad. So I probably won't play that. So my character is kind of a father to these characters. And we're going to see that more as the show progresses in future seasons, God willing.
You know, one of the things I keep throwing out is if sci-fi is a prism to view us, to view our current society, you know, the lens through which we view ourselves. Mm-hmm. What do you think the show is saying about us?
You know, what I think the show is kind of saying is that, you know, we become, like, if you look at the show, the iconography is jarring. There's mass exterminations, there's occupation. The same thing is happening every day around the world, but we don't see it because we live in it. You know what I mean? And also because it doesn't apply to us because it's not happening directly on our soil. But so what we're actually just saying is, look around. This is not different than what's happening in countries all over the world where people have no voice or can be literally killed for misbehaving or acting differently than they're supposed to. But then again, I'm not a big person that thinks that entertainment always has to teach. I mean, most actors and writers are out of their minds. I don't get my life lessons from these people. It's an exploration of what could have possibly happened. And then if you actually have the kind of wherewithal to be able to think like that, you can look around and say, well, this is happening all over the world. And some of the things that happen to us in the show are actually happening in America. and we don't think about it applies to us because we're under the guise that it's until the electricity goes out for like more than 5 hours and the price of milk goes up $6 a gallon, we're probably not going to. We're not going to think about it because our life is really easy.
Right, when I spoke to Frank about the show, one of the things I said to him, it's that I think that if this happened here now, our first impulse would be to say, make sure that the internet's still working,
Yeah.
and that our phones are still working. And if they are, it's like, oh,
If you look
Television too.
If you look at what happened in how when Hitler came to power, Germany was in a really bad spot. People were starving, the economy was in the toilet, and he promised them something, and then he delivered it. So it's like what he said made sense because he wasn't saying crazy shit. And they were walking down this path of prosperity, and you're walking next to Hitler. The next thing you know, the path is way over there, and you've gone too far. And I mean, it would even be worse in America because because life is so easy. We're so used to getting everything we want on the internet. Something happened to me recently. I didn't know how to buy things at IKEA because I buy everything on the internet. We were shooting the show. I needed lamps, pillows, a bunch of things like that. So I went into IKEA and had no idea how to do it. And I was like, wow, my life has become so computer-centric. It's become so easy. So German life was rough and way rougher in comparison to ours. Could you imagine if like the internet went out or if something major happened in this country and a man stepped up and said, come this way. I'm going to fix all these things for you and make your life comfortable again. I can't say that this wouldn't happen again and again and again.
I mean, to be honest, during the Red Scare of the communists, a lot of that stuff was happening
Exactly.
in America, and people don't think about that anymore. I mean, because there's a movie coming out soon about the Red Scare and the McCarthyism and stuff, but everybody was behind him back then.
Because it sounded good
it sounds
and
good.
it seems safe. And those are things, that's a really great point, actually. You come around with maybe interviews. It's a really good point. And so it keeps happening. History is cyclical. We don't learn. If you look at America today, we have a lot in common with Victorian England. We have our hand in every pie, or a finger in every pie in the world. We're externally focused. The Kardashians, beauty, being rich, all that stuff is the things that we think about, surface stuff, and our infrastructure is kind of failing us a little bit. We're undereducating, like Latin people who are going to become our majority in 50 years. We're undereducating them, and one day they're going to be calling the shots. They're going to be our elected officials. It's the same thing that happened in Victorian England. And the same thing that happened in Rome. I mean, it's kind of comforting.
At least you know what's going to happen.
You mentioned that. Sorry, 1 second. You mentioned that the concept itself kind of sells the show, right?
Yeah.
Everyone hears the concept and their interest is peaked in the internet. What do you think is going to surprise those people who came into it just expecting, to see the world the way they wanted, that they thought they were going to see it with this change? What's going to really shock them?
Well, it dissolves the initial shock. I don't know why I thought I could eat that when talking. The initial shock goes away very quickly because you just become used to the world. And that's the same with anything. So I can't really pick one thing that's going to blow people's minds. I mean, there are little things. Technology has evolved in a different way. Japan, because they essentially won the war, there was never a tech boom in Japan. So they never were focused to... So the Germans control technology. So instead of getting from New York to San Francisco in 5 hours on an airplane, you get there in 2 on a rocket ship. Because technology's evolved in a different way. Our telephones look different. Things look different because we've evolved differently. But I think you get used to it pretty quickly.
I just hope that people, and again, going to that conversation, one of Frank's concerns, it seemed, was that that there aren't going to be people with numbers tattooed on them anymore. That whole period is fading away in such a way that it's important that a show like this exists to sort of remind.
Well, the new regime, the Nazi regime, doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because it is too jarring. Like, they did the smartest thing they possibly could do, and this is from Philip K. Dick's mind, is that they didn't occupy the integrator. I mean, they're aliens, basically. They took over our bodies, and they took over our minds and are using our bodies for their own purpose. It's brilliant. And scary.
Yeah.
So you guys have all seen the pilot, right?
Yeah.
They haven't released a second episode, right?
I saw it. It was on
They've-
Entertainment Week. Entertainment Week.
They've streamed it in a few places, and then I think they're showing it tonight
Yeah, I've seen it. It's very
as well here. I'm a really big fan of the book, so I'm really interested to see where they're going to change things.
So am I. Because we, the one thing about our show is that it's definitely a project that's in flux. Issa Hackett, Philip K. Dick's daughter, is our executive producer. She's
wow.
there, and we all feel that we owe his legacy. I think he died before he ever saw one of his movies made into a book. I mean, books made into a movie, and like everything from Blade Runner to Total Recall, like Minority Report, yeah. So we never saw that. So we feel a kind of an obligation to his legacy. But at the same time, certain things have to change. Like the film had to become. I mean, the book became a film because it's more visual. Like in the book, the grasshopper lies heavy as a book and not a film. But it's so much more jarring to see it to see Alexa Davos' character, to see her respond to film. Because film basically has changed how the world looks at itself.
We're out of time.